Oh no, the stock market went down. This is so bad. What's up, everybody? It's Zillennial Nexus here. Welcome back to the channel. I've talked about before how retirement is a little iffy these days, whether it's inflation, basically destroying retirement funds, and the whole idea of retirement, I think, is more reserved for people who literally cannot work versus someone who's just past a certain age. I mean, Clint Eastwood is still directing movies at 95, so it's technically possible for older people to keep doing things, but that's beside the point. I've also talked about here on this channel about how waiting till you retire to travel is a bad idea because either you are not going to have the money because inflation will destroy whatever you save up, or you're going to be literally incapable of doing it. Which brings me to today's article from the Wall Street Journal. Late career job losses are blurring what retirement looks like in America by Veronica Dagger and Ann Turges. And so yeah, that's another thing to consider. It's not like back in the boomers' day when you would work the same job for 30 years and then retire with a full pension. That does not exist these days. But before we get into the depressing realities of getting older in this day and age in 2025 and the harsh reality that it's not everything it's cracked up to be sure to give this video a like, comment what you think about all this, and subscribe for daily videos of cultural commentary from a man caught between generations. Anyway, let's see what they have to say. One man who lost his job in his early 60s is transitioning into retirement by working 25 hours a week. A woman who recently got laid off in her 50s worries about her finances if she doesn't get a new job. A bumpy transition often awaits people who get laid off or take buyouts late in their careers. For many, the line between working years and retirement starts to blur. It is a growing concern for people who, with jobs in the federal government or at private companies cutting jobs. Economic uncertainty has persisted in recent months, though employers continued to add jobs in June. For older people who want to stay in the workforce, a layoff can be followed by a longer spell of unemployment. It takes nearly 26 weeks, on average, for people aged 55 to 64 to find a job, compared with 19 weeks for people ages 25 to 34, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. Yeah, I can tell you right now, under 25, it can take about that long. Hold on. Yeah, it can take around that much time, unfortunately, because you can't just walk into a place with a firm handshake and ask if they're hiring. I'm sorry, I had to invoke the boomer trope because unfortunately that is not the case. You can't just walk into a place with a firm handshake and ask if they're hiring. But that's beside the point. It's not a fun job market out there. That's why I'm on this YouTube hustle, trying to build something more than just a W-2 job. Trying to build my own thing. Getting back to the article. People laid off at higher ages are less likely to move into a new field than those who quit, said Kevin Cahill, an economist at FTI Consulting. Ageism and higher compensation expectations can be obstacles to reemployment, he said. Older career workers who find new jobs take an 11% pay cut on average, according to a forthcoming study Cahill co-wrote. Those who retire might need to break into their savings early. They might miss out on making a 401k or IRA contributions, never mind the catch-up contributions followed for those age 50 and older. We spoke with 4 people who experienced late career layoffs or buyouts about how they are making it work. Yeah, I need to know what their definition of buyouts is. Okay, that link didn't go to anything useful for me, so I'm just going to open up Grok on my browser and we're going to just get a definition for what a buyout is. Like, is the buyout for if you're buying a share or if you're selling your share of a company like Walter White when he sold his share of Gray Matter or something like that. All right, I'm going to ask Grok, what is a buyout in an employment situation? Okay, according to Grok, it's a financial incentive like a lump sum payment or a severance package to voluntarily leave their job, often to reduce staff, avoid layoffs, or resolve a contract. Makes sense. Or they could always just do a layoff and then throw in a severance package. I believe that's what they do in a lot of the tech companies. I don't know if they did that recently with the wave of Xbox layoffs I heard about, but I digress. Okay, now that we know what a buyout is, our first profile is Kevin Crane of Gloucester, Massachusetts, and New York City, 64 years old, who spends $240,000 a year. And there he is in front of all those boats. Kevin Crane was the head of retirement research at Bank of America. Then in 2023, the bank offered him early retirement. He never imagined the life he studied could be so satisfying. Crane assumed he would work full bore until age 65. After getting past some disappointment at retiring 2 years sooner than expected, he quickly pivoted into a retirement philosophy of what's next? Crane, now 64, has built a second act that includes part-time paid work as a consultant and the director of a retirement industry association focused on 401k products and services that produce a retirement income. He provides free advice to 2 nonprofits on aging and 2 startups he has invested in. Had I known there were ways to transition into retirement and still work and be engaged, I would have thought about doing it earlier, Crane said. It's called self-employment. He makes less money, but enjoys having control over his time. He typically works about 5 hours a day, leaving time for the gym and reading. He used to assume he would retire to a life of leisure, but his father's retirement experience dissuaded him. Dad went from 100 miles per hour to 0 and never did anything else, said Crane, who believes this left his father vulnerable to dementia. Yeah, I had a rather old writing teacher in freshman year of college who said that it's important in retirement to stay mentally engaged. Like, at a certain point, they are going to there is going to be some cognitive decline, but that can be managed. That's probably why my grandfather does crossword puzzles. Yeah, my grandfather does crossword puzzles. That's something that keeps the mind engaged. And I guess you could argue not really having a purpose could lead to increases the risk of dementia. There's one of many factors. So yeah, me personally, that's why I read these articles and do this channel, so that I have a greater purpose than just playing video games. Look, I enjoy them. I took a couple days off from YouTube production the 2 days before. Now, the day before, of, and after the 4th of July, because I planned accordingly. Now I'm back on the grind, and honestly, I do feel like there's actually some purpose. And video games have been accused of creating a false sense of accomplishment. I'm not gonna lie, I do feel some accomplishment when I get a gym badge in a Pokemon game, or complete a dungeon in a Zelda game, or find a piece of heart or something. But the point is, retirement, as I've said in other videos, I think it's more for people who literally cannot work. Like the traditional idea, that is. Getting back into the article, as a reminder, Crane keeps his father's checkbook, which showed signs of his decline. Crane said the transition was easy because he was already working from home. He and his wife Rebecca Crane, 63, split their time between New York City and Gloucester, Mass, where they recently purchased a home. As his schedule has become less intense, Crane said, he has been trying to keep his wife's needs in mind. He is careful not to intrude on her routine. He set up automatic transfers from an investment account to their bank account, so she doesn't have to ask him for money. Friend told him not to describe himself as retired on his LinkedIn profile. He actively posts and comments, which has kept him visible and has sparked opportunities. Crane earns about $110,000 a year, which supplements distributions from cash and executive deferred compensation and restricted stock programs. Together, they replace about 80% of his pre-retirement pay. In 2027, the restricted stock and deferred compensation will run out, and the couple will begin tapping their retirement and brokerage accounts, which have 90% in fixed income. They plan to delay claiming Social Security until age 70. Their net worth is more than $5 million and includes retirement accounts with $1.9 million. Their only debt is a $360,000 mortgage with a rate of 2.8%. The couple spend about $23,000 a month, half of on their mortgage and rent for their Manhattan apartment. Premiums for health insurance run about $2,000 a month. Given his low tolerance for investment risk, Crane is happy to be relatively shielded from the stock market's volatility. Having the heart issues, I don't want the financial stress, he said. Yeah, I can't say I blame him for wanting to avoid the volatility of the stock market. I mean, look what happened on Liberation Day. Now, being Gen Z and not having any sort of vested interest in the stock market, yeah, I'm not exactly, I'm not partic, I shouldn't particularly care one way or another. I mean, it's sad that retirement accounts were affected by it, but Gerbert Johnson said it best about how Gen Z is like Oh no, the stock market went down. This is so bad. Because, generally speaking, millennials and Gen Z don't really have much of an investment in the stock market because they don't have enough to invest. So it's really a matter of who has the most invested in it. But yeah, it's probably for the better that people get away from the stock market because of its volatility, because it can change on a whim. I mean, I believe the stock market tanked for a bit when I think it was when false reports about Obama dying came out. You know what? I need to look this up. Have false reports of a president's death ever affected the stock market? I know for a fact that there was a fake claim of a president dying which caused the stock market tank. Okay, according to Grok, 1897, William McKinley's death. Well, rumors of it. 1945, false report of FDR's dying. It's usually due to uncertainty. They usually stabilize once the truth is confirmed. Specific data on these incidents is limited as they predate modern real-time market tracking. Okay, maybe it wasn't Obama that I remembered. You know what? While I have Grok do a deeper search, let's get back to the article. Drew Meyers, Villages, Florida, age 68, annual spending $96,000 a year. And here he is with, I'm guessing that's his wife. And they just golf several times a week. Now, if that's what they enjoy doing, I respect their decision. Gets them outside, so there's that. Drew Myers planned to work until he was 70, but the technology salesman wasn't devastated to be laid off at 67. Many on his team were also let go alongside him in the fall of 2023. He was used to rejection, having spent decades making pitches. Getting about $70,000 in severance also helped. He initially looked for another job in tech. He got first round interviews, but he hit subsequent roadblocks that he attributed to ageism. Interviewers often said after meeting him that they wanted to hire someone less senior. It was frustrating, he said. Um, how did they say that without getting a hiring discrimination lawsuit? Okay, maybe they were smart enough to not put it in writing, because unless he was able to secretly record them saying that in a one-party consent state like Texas or New Mexico, he wouldn't have anything to use in a hiring discrimination lawsuit. Where if they wrote something down in any state, this is not legal advice, but you could bring it to a lawyer and see if you have a case to sue them for hiring discrimination. In this case, on the basis of age, just because they happen to be past the retirement age. But the article doesn't seem to say anything about writing. I mean, that. Okay, before we go back to the article, Grok is done doing with its deep search. So, the quick version, research the historical impacts, browsing results. Okay, the short version is, while specific instances of false reports of a president's death affecting the stock market are not well documented, the evidence leans towards such events causing temporary volatility. And you can see I conducted this on July 6, 2025. Has a bunch of links, but these are situations where the stock market dipped and then recovered days to weeks after what happened to JFK, less than a month after. Is that the actual FDR death or the false report that came out? Okay, April 23rd, 2013, false White House tweet. That's the one that I was talking about. That's the one I remember hearing about. I guess there was a false White House tweet. But I think it's time to stop obsessing over that. There was a false White House tweet in 2013 that led to this kind of thing. I vaguely remember it being something about a false report of Obama's death. But whatever. Let's get back to the article. Since he was no longer working, he had the time to take care for his father, who was dying of cancer. For about the first year of his retirement, he shuttled his dad to doctor's appointments, made sure his dad ate, and kept him company before he died. Retirement didn't feel real for Drew and his wife, Anne Marie O'Connell Meyers, until April when they moved from Connecticut to the Villages, Florida, a large retirement community. Many of their friends had left Connecticut, and only one of their 7 grandchildren remained in the area. They had always wanted to live in Florida. The estate of Drew's dad is almost settled. Anne Marie quit her job as an activity director at a senior facility. It took time to adjust to withdrawing money from their retirement accounts and no longer having paychecks. Their expenses have been higher than they would have liked for most of this year, largely because of the move. Now that they are settling in, they expect their monthly spending to drop up to about $8,000 from roughly $10,000. That includes about $1,500 towards health insurance premiums. The couple has about $1.3 million in retirement savings. He has a pension of about $800 a month from a former employer and about $4,090 a month in Social Security. They have about $16,000 in timeshare debt. They are renting a 3-bedroom home for a year before they commit to buying in the Villages. They anticipate spending about $350,000, which they plan to pay for with funds he will inherit from the sale of his father's house. They are enjoying daily swims and golfing several times a week, with plans to take up pickleball in the fall. We finally get to do all the things we wanted to do when we were working, said Anne Marie. Well, good for them on being able to do the things that they wanted to do. I guess they're in good enough shape to be able to enjoy doing it in the first place. Now, this is a bit different than traveling. Like, for example, pickleball. Yeah, they can probably play with people their age on similar skill levels. Where even I, as an out of shape fat ass, would probably be able to beat an older person in a game of pickleball because I'm still relatively young at the age of 28. I don't know, I've never played pickleball, but I'm reasonably certain I would win because I just have naturally more energy being relatively younger. I digress. Anyway, they're enjoying what they're doing. Good for them. Clearly, if all you want to do is leisure activities that you won't be disappointed if you aren't able to do them or if you stay in one place, it's probably a lot easier to probably a lot less costly than living in an RV or something, and way less effort too. Getting back to the article, we have Brenda Pittz of Brooklyn, New York, age 56, spending $156,000 annually. Brenda Pittz got laid off in March. She doesn't consider herself retired, but if she can't find a new job, she's concerned she will have to rethink her plan to retire in New York. I was hoping this would be my last job and it would enable me to stay employed until at least my early 60s, said Pittz. The Brooklyn resident, 56, is networking and enjoying having more free time in the city. She is looking to keep working in the financial services industry, but has found many companies currently have hiring freezes. She said she would consider taking a pay cut to work in government or at a nonprofit, but is finding anecdotally that a lot of people my age have stopped working. She misses her colleagues and is glad many have reached out. I've gotten a lot of validation from people who remind me of all the value I brought to their lives. Pitts has always feared falling back into the financial insecurity she grew up with. She is the youngest of 5 children who were raised by a custodian and a roofer. Well, back then, a custodian and a roofer could more easily afford that compared to a custodian and a roofer in 2025. The dollar had more buying power and all that. Like maybe it was more of a situation of they didn't have the newest things or the fanciest of whatever. As long as they had enough to eat and a roof over their heads, maybe there was more to that. Maybe the article will talk more about that, but I'm just saying that financial insecurity was a little less likely back then because the dollar had more buying power. I mean, look at Stranger Things. Joyce Byers had a owned a house working retail in 1983. Let that sink in. Now, maybe she got it in the divorce. I don't know. The show never explicitly said that. Uh, Maybe I should shut up before I say something I regret. I was always worried about being one check away from disaster, said Pitts, who attended Harvard University, largely on a scholarship, and got an MBA. And here she is, living the high life in New York City. Our exhibits, movies and live music, everything from punk to opera. There she is partying with some drink in her hand, and there she is with her cat. While in her 30s, Pittz paid off her student loans and started saving for retirement. In her 40s, she left Silicon Valley and moved to New York to work in financial services, where she saw more women working in their 50s. In recent years, she has been saving the annual maximum allowed in both her IRA and 401k. Last year, she put about $80,000 into the two, including her employer's match and the catch-up contributions people 50 and older can make. She currently has $2.3 million saved. More recently, she put her contributions on hold. She worries her $4 million goal might be unattainable. Pittz works about 4 hours a day on her job search and consults free to nonprofits. She is a member of museums and film societies, and she enjoys exhibits, movies, and live music, everything from punk to opera. She spends about $13,000 a month, including $5,175 on her mortgage and maintenance fees, $1,400 on health-related costs, and $3,000 for food and entertainment. Yeah, it's probably that high because she's in New York City. Everything is more expensive. Though I will say, I too would enjoy things like museums and exhibits and movies. Not as much of a live music guy, but I've talked about other things I enjoy doing here on the channel, so I'm not going to repeat myself. Pittz has stopped most of her charitable contributions for now, but she hopes to use some of her savings to help young people from financially disadvantaged families. I don't have children of my own, but I'd like my legacy to be that I made the path easier for younger people who come behind me, she said. Oh, it's a very noble aspiration. You know, I just realized she is a Gen Xer, 56, so born in 65 or later. So I guess that goes to show that the Gen Xers are way less selfish than the boomers are stereotyped to be. And last but not least, Cardier Snyder, Plano, Texas, age 70, spending 108,000 annually. And there he is with his wife Barbara. For years, Cardier Snyder, a veteran of the printing business, watched the industry change. By his early 60s, most clients had shifted to digital. Demand for printed materials such as corporate annual reports had plummeted. The writing was on the wall, he said, but at that point, he wasn't interested in learning new skills. That and the brain probably wasn't physically capable of it, what with being that old. Trust me, I speak from experience. It was very difficult to teach my grandmother to use the iPhone and AirPods so that she would just maintain her hearing aids. Trust me, trying to teach older people anything is going to be difficult. I'm not saying that to be mean, it is just a fact because they're set in their ways, because their brains are a lot more hardened on this kind of thing. The neural pathways, they just don't change like they used to. Like, up until you're 25, your brain is developing. And after that, yeah, neural pathways can change, but it's going to be a lot harder, comparatively speaking. At 28, I probably have a much harder time with my neural pathways being able to change or not. That being said, I do try to challenge myself to experiment and try new things and such because I really don't want to be the old man struggling to learn the new skill. Let's get back to the article before I say something too ageist. In 2019, Snyder accepted an offer to retire from his longtime employer in return for health care coverage until he qualified for Medicare the following year. Initially, Snyder, who had planned to retire at 67, worried about whether he and his wife Barbara would have enough money. A health scare about 6 years before the buyout helped him put retirement in perspective. An x-ray for a persistent cough revealed a mass in the former marathon runner's chest. This turned out to be an aneurysm and led to the discovery of a failing heart valve. After 3 surgeries, he was expected to live about 5 to 10 years. He decided retiring earlier than planned was a good thing. "I didn't want to die at my desk at work," Snyder said. Yeah, he must have read that story about the Wells Fargo employee who literally died at her desk and nobody noticed for days. I think it was Wells Fargo. I just know that one made the rounds on the internet, and it just goes to show that it's not a good idea to make work your entire life. I should probably just get back to the article before I say something stupid. Their financial advisor assured them they would be fine. The couple have about 500,000 in retirement accounts and receive about 6,000 a month in Social Security. They also get another 1,900 a month in rental income from a duplex they own and live in. The Plano, Texas couple spend around 9,000 a month. They have about 100,000 left on the duplex's mortgage. Their biggest expenses included property taxes, home insurance, and food. It took him several months to adapt to the slower pace of retirement after decades of going to the office. Now 70, he also had to get used to not being the boss. Barbara, who had retired as a nurse at 59, was accustomed to having the house to herself during the day. The couple now share the house more of the time. "I had to tell him to relax and that I wasn't one of his employees," Barbara joked. Having more time to spend with their grandchildren helped, they both said. Shuttling their grandchildren to sports practices and babysitting in a cornerstone of their retirement is a cornerstone of their retirement, and it takes up about 12 hours a week on average. He heads to the gym 3 mornings a week around 5:30 a.m. to lift weights with his son. Barbara enjoys quilting for charity. They garden together. "You need to find your new purpose once you leave your job," he said. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. Because you can have, because if you don't have a purpose, then, well, you're not really going to have a reason to do much of anything. Now, you can enjoy things like video games and such, but at a certain point, that's not really a purpose. I speak from experience because I didn't get in as much time with Let's Go Eevee over the last couple of days as I thought I'd be able to with my extended break, but I was able to still get some more time in. But I really kind of felt like I didn't have too much of a purpose without recording these videos or really doing anything for this beyond just checking the comments every now and then, the numbers in general. So on that note, I'm going to leave it here for the video. You let me know in the comments down below what you think about the whole having purpose in retirement thing or the lack thereof. what was the title of the article again? Whether you think that retirement should look one way or another or anything like that, or if you have questions about the concept of retirement, knowing what we know now and how the world isn't the same as it was when the boomers originally went into work. Give this video a like, subscribe for daily videos of cultural commentary from a man caught between generations, and I'll see you soon.